So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Pokemon, so let's start the series. Naruto. Hey, Iruka-sensei. You found me already, too bad, I barely had time to learn 2 techniques, but that should be enough, right? If I show you I can do them, I'll be able to graduate, said Naruto, wearing a broad smile as the blonde 12-year-old spun around with wide eyes. Iruka furrowed his brow and questioned, "What are you talking about?" Naruto said with delight, "That's what Mizuki-sensei said. He told me it was my makeup exam, I was supposed to steal the scroll and learn a jutsu, then I'd pass." Mizuki? With a sinking sensation in his chest, Iruka thought. Iruka took the brunt of the onslaught when a dozen kunai launched from the bushes behind him before he could react. Fortunately, their aim was off, and Iruka was able to push Naruto aside in time. Iruka said, "Mizuki," as she noticed the figure perched on a tree branch. The icy, authoritative voice of Mizuki said, "Naruto, give me the scroll." Iruka's voice strained from the anguish as she said, "No, don't." Now lying on the ground, Naruto asked, "What's going on?" as he glanced between the two, bewildered. "He tricked you." Iruka gasped. "He wants the scroll for himself. It contains dangerous forbidden techniques that could threaten the safety of the village if they fall into the wrong hands." Mizuki laughed. "Haven't they told you why everyone hates you? Why you've been alone your whole life?" "What do you mean?" Naruto said, his eyes widening. "Stop it, Mizuki." Iruka fought to stand up, his arms gushing blood. "Let me tell you the truth," Mizuki went on. 12 years ago, the Ninetales attacked the village, it destroyed everything, and the 4th Hokage didn't kill it, he sealed it away, sealed it inside you, Naruto. You're the Ninetales." Naruto halted, his hands shaking as he gripped the scroll. "That can't be true," he said. Observing the agony on Naruto's face, Iruka grimaced. "Naruto, that's why they all hate you," Mizuki chuckled. "You're the monster. You've always been the monster." With tears in his eyes and his pulse pounding, Naruto took a step back and said, No, I'm not." Mizuki hurled a gigantic shuriken at Naruto, saying, "Give me the scroll. A beast like you doesn't deserve it." Iruka reacted before it could hit him, throwing himself in front of Naruto and receiving the blow. The shuriken stuck in his back, and Iruka collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Naruto questioned in a trembling voice, "Why?" "Because I know how it feels to be alone. After I lost my family during the attack, I was alone and unwanted, so I turned into the class clown to gain attention," Iruka said, coughing as he coughed, looking up at him with blood running from his mouth. Naruto's gaze expanded. Iruka gave a feeble smile and said, "You worked hard, you're strong, Naruto, you're like me." Mizuki laughed and added, "Ha ha ha, he's lying, he hates you for what you did." After glancing between the two, Naruto turned and fled. Iruka was now helpless on the ground when Mizuki leaped down to him. Iruka used all of his might to get to his feet, yanking the Fuma shuriken from his back and hurling it at Mizuki. Mizuki sidestepped and allowed the shuriken to pass by. "As soon as I've dealt with the demon, I'm coming back for you," Mizuki declared before leaping away. After a little while, Naruto was observed leaping from tree to tree. Everything Mizuki said was false. "Give me the scroll, Naruto," Iruka said, appearing beside him out of nowhere. He was then tackled by Naruto, causing them both to fall to the ground. Naruto managed to land on his feet and leaned against a tree. When he threw off his henge, the Iruka asked, How did you know I wasn't Iruka?" Because I am, replied Iruka, who had reverted to his former self. Ha ha ha, you think you can stop me? It doesn't matter, even if I don't get the scroll, Naruto will use it to wipe out the village, don't you understand? He's just like me, he's hungry for power and will take revenge on the village that hurt him, just like a beast, Mizuki laughed. You're right. After hearing the entire exchange, Naruto froze. So Iruka never believed in me, he pondered. That's what a beast would do, but not Naruto, he's one of a kind, he always works hard and does his best. It's true that he messes up and everybody jumps on him, but his suffering only makes him stronger. When Naruto heard this, tears began to well up in his eyes. He mustered his courage and emerged from behind the tree he was hiding behind. Mizuki said, "There you are. Now give me the scroll. I won't Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu." Naruto yelled as innumerable clones of himself materialized all around him. Thousands of Narutos then charged at Mizuki, burying him beneath them completely. When it was all over, a battered and bloody Mizuki lay on the ground, and the only indication that he was still alive was the occasional twitch. As Naruto returned to Iruka, he knelt next to him and said, "Iruka-sensei, I'm fine, don't worry, you did great, now close your eyes." Naruto followed instructions. Iruka reached up, removed his headband, and put it on Naruto's forehead. Naruto opened his eyes as he felt the item touch his skin. Iruka was seated in front of him, the only thing that changed was that his headband was gone. "Congratulations, Naruto, you graduate." Tears filled Naruto's eyes as he grinned and gripped the headband. With the headband securely fastened over his forehead, Naruto strolled leisurely through the dimly lit streets of Konoha. He looked at his image in a storefront window and grinned as the blue of his new headband glistened in the moonlight. "I've become a ninja." After Mizuki's defeat, the streets were largely deserted, with only a few windows lit. The ANBU quickly arrived and took Mizuki into custody. They went to meet the Hokage, who explained what had happened 12 years prior, how he and the Yondaime had hoped that Naruto would be viewed as a hero, and how everything went wrong when false rumors started to circulate. After everything, Iruka invited Naruto out for ramen, which he accepted with pleasure because who would refuse the food of the gods? Feeling lighter than ever, he thanked Iruka, Tsuchi, and Ayam for the delicious meal before departing. Naruto's apartment appeared as he rounded a corner. It was housed in a dilapidated structure on the outskirts of the village, far from the busy streets. The hinges creaked as he pushed the door open, and his little, claustrophobic apartment was just as he had left it, strewn with old clothes and instant ramen cups. When the door clicked shut, Naruto sighed and slumped against it as the day's burden finally settled on him. Tears filled his eyes as his fingertips touched his forehead protector. He swiftly wiped away the tears with his sleeve while grinning. The thin mattress sagged under Naruto's weight as he kicked off his shoes and fell onto his bed. His head felt heavy, but in a good way. As Naruto gazed at the ceiling, an idea struck him. Why not try out the Mukyaku Kuchios no Jutsu, contractless summoning jutsu, the second jutsu he had learned? Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram, horse. He slammed his palm on the floor and bit his finger, exclaiming, "Mukyaku Kuchios no Jutsu." Its body is primarily grayish-brown with a small hump on its back, giving it a unique shape. The underside of its belly and lower jaw is a lighter gray, creating a striking contrast with its darker upper body. A seal spread from his hand across the floor, and after a small poof accompanied by a white chakra cloud, a small, bipedal creature about 80 centimeters tall looked at Naruto with a curious gaze. Its head, which is quite large for its body, has a blunt snout with a ridge above the nostrils, 2 sharp teeth on the lower jaw, and 2 large, tooth-like spikes on the upper jaw. It has 2 bright orange spikes on top of its head and dark markings around the lower edge of each eye. Tyrant has a spiky ruff of primitive white feathers around its neck, 2 white claws on each of its tiny forelimbs, and strong, sturdy hind legs with rectangular armor plating over the knees. Each foot has 3 large white claws, plus a smaller, clawless 4th digit, and Tyrant's short tail ends in an orange spike. It yelled, "Tyrant," as it peered around bewildered. "Cool," remarked Naruto. "This is awesome," shouted Naruto, whose eyes widened in enthusiasm. Tyrant cocked its head, still attempting to understand its surroundings, and knelt down to better observe. In anticipation of a reply, Naruto questioned, "Can you understand me?" Tyrant's bright orange spikes twitched as it growled softly. "Tyrant," it said again, its tone both inquisitive and perplexed. With a burst of enthusiasm, Naruto laughed and said, "Looks like we're going to be great friends." "Hey! Wait!" Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as Tyrant suddenly raced forward, sniffing at a nearby garbage can. With a quick motion, it pushed it over, sending trash flying everywhere. With its tail bouncing with delight, Tyrant started pawing at the cans and wrappers that were lying around. The tiny animal took on a crumpled paper bag, chomping down and easily tearing it apart. Naruto said, "Whoa, calm down," as he attempted to seize Tyrant, but the little creature was too preoccupied with its newfound playing to resist. It growled playfully and bounced from object to object, creating a commotion. "Tyrant, stop. We can't make a mess like this." Naruto laughed, attempting to control the mayhem as he watched with a mix of enjoyment and worry. Tyrant, however, was not paying attention. It started chasing its own tail and became entangled in a string of abandoned ramen cups. It then leaped to tackle them and sent them flying. Finally catching Tyrant by the scruff of its neck, Naruto exclaimed, all right. I get it. You're excited. But we have to figure out what you can really do first. Let's see if we can do something cooler than trashing the place," Naruto said, laughing. Tyrant writhed, attempting to escape, but Naruto held on. Naruto released Tyrant and left the apartment. Fortunately, the building was empty when he was accepted into the academy. His Jiji, the Hokage, had given it to him when he was accepted, but it was in even worse condition at the time, and he had only been able to fix up his own apartment on the top floor, which required a lot of time and money. Behind the building was a large open area with a few training logs that he used for practice. If he was right, this was the old ninja academy before the new one was constructed in the center of Konoha. After guiding Tyrant to the wide space, he paused in front of the worn training dummies. Naruto crossed his arms and nodded to Tyrant, saying, "Okay, how about you show me what you can do?" "Tyrant," the creature exclaimed eagerly, lowering its head to prepare. A second later, it charged at one of the wooden posts, slamming into it with all of its might. The log broke under the impact and rolled a few feet away. With wide eyes, Naruto approached the now severed post and watched in amazement as Tyrant used its tackle to effortlessly knock it aside. "Whoa, you're strong," he cried, running his fingers along the broken portion of the log. "It's like he didn't even try," Naruto mused. Tyrant turned back to face Naruto, flipping its tail in a playful manner before abruptly spinning around to face him. Naruto blinked in bewilderment, unsure of what had happened, but something about him felt strange. He attempted to move his arms and jump a little, but everything felt heavier, as if his body wasn't reacting as it usually did. Naruto scratched his head and murmured, "What the?" He couldn't get rid of the impression that his regular protections had been decreased, making him feel more vulnerable. However, the peculiar feeling passed fast, and he felt normal again after about 30 seconds. He looked at Tyrant, who was now concentrating on a tiny tree close by. The creature narrowed its eyes, and then the tree started to wither. The bark darkened, its leaves shriveled up, and after about 4 minutes, it was just a brittle, dead stump. You did that?" Naruto's mouth fell open as he gazed at Tyrant, who was now obviously exhausted from the bizarre attack. The little creature wavered a little, but it remained resolute, determined not to display weakness. With a gentle stroke on Tyrant's head, Naruto replied, "That was awesome, but looks like it took a lot out of you," as he approached and knelt down to his level. Tyrant leaned into Naruto's fingers and gave a little growl of satisfaction. Naruto grinned. "Alright, I think we should call it a night for now. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what else you can do. This jutsu, it's great," Naruto thought as he headed back to his apartment after picking Tyrant up and carrying the weary creature inside. Iruka informed Naruto that the team assignments would be completed in 3 days, so he focused on honing both his and Tyrant's skills during the next 3 days of intense training in the backyard. By the second day, Naruto had finally discovered Tyrant's second ability. That morning, while hunting in the forest, they came across a boar. Naruto threw a few kunai at it, but his aim was still off, and he missed the important spots. The boar was only slightly hurt. Tyrant intervened, using what Naruto had come to refer to as tail whip, and Naruto, who had always been the target of that move, saw the boar decrease in speed and weaken its defenses. "So that's what it does," Naruto pondered, closely observing. Despite his lackluster aim, Naruto took advantage of the situation and hurled more kunai, which this time sank deeper into the pig's hide and dealt it more harm. With Tyrant's help, Naruto was eventually able to bring the boar down. Naruto, panting, turned to face Tyrant, who was snarling with pride. "Good job, Tyrant," Naruto smiled. Tyrant was proving to be an invaluable partner. Naruto's taijutsu and teamwork were steadily improving, and Naruto felt proud of how far they'd come in just a few days. Naruto and Tyrant sat close to the fallen boar, taking a moment to catch their breath. Still feeling the pain from kunai practice, Naruto looked down at his hands and thought, "I'm getting better," but he also realized that he still had a lot more to learn before team assignments. "Without Tyrant, I wouldn't have been able to take that boar down, and I won't be the dead last any longer." He hoped they would help him get stronger and that he would be placed on a team with Sakura, but the thought of his future teammates made him anxious. Would they treat him the same way they had throughout the academy? His thoughts drifted back to the academy as they slept, wondering what kind of team he would be placed on, who his teammates would be, and, most importantly, what kind of sensei he would get. Naruto wasn't a bad student. In fact, he had recognized early on that the academy teachers were trying to fail him. It was impossible to ignore the fact that he was always given blunt or unbalanced weapons during kunai and shuriken practice. He discovered this when he was given the appropriate ninja equipment that all genins receive after graduation. The imbalance had thrown off everything he had trained for, so he had to begin his shuriken jutsu training anew. It wasn't just shuriken practice either. When he was learning taijutsu, the teachers would always give him the wrong instructions for the basic Konoha technique, as if he were blind. Every time he attempted to imitate the other students, a teacher would correct him, leading him back to a flawed stance. Eventually, Naruto began working on his own style in secret, but a teacher caught on and beat him down, demonstrating that the academy style was supposedly superior. As a result, Naruto played along during lessons, only practicing his own style in private. With the exception of Bunshin no Jutsu, this pattern persisted throughout all of his classes. Despite his best efforts, the jutsu would not work for him, regardless of how much time he spent practicing it or how much support he received from Iruka. He shook his head, not wanting to think about those things. "We can't let anyone hold us back, tyrant," Naruto remarked, rubbing his partner's rough hide. "We've got to keep getting stronger." With a snarl of agreement, Tyrant's small, strong physique radiated energy. "Let's get this boar back, we can sell it to the butcher and use the money for more training supplies, we'll get even stronger tomorrow," Naruto said as he got to his feet, wiping the mud from his jeans. Although Naruto knew that the team assignments were only the beginning and that there would be more difficult missions, stronger opponents, and new enemies, he was more determined than ever to prove everyone wrong and become the greatest ninja Konoha had ever seen as he began dragging the boar through the forest with Tyrant by his side. The last few days had been difficult for both of them, but it had paid off. Tyrant was now noticeably faster, and Naruto was astounded by how quickly his little companion's abilities were developing. His first ability, which he called Tackle, had improved with Tyrant's newfound speed and strength. His second ability, Tail Whip, could now affect a target for a full minute. The last ability, Curse, Naruto had also learned more about the final one. As of right now, Tyrant could only use Curse on stationary targets, and it took about 10 seconds to activate. The jutsu used up about half of Tyrant's chakra, but in exchange, it drained the target's chakra while increasing Tyrant's strength and defense at the expense of some speed. The drain was significant, taking about 25% of a target's chakra per minute, though Naruto suspected there might be ways to break the technique. When Naruto had Tyrant tested on him, he hardly noticed any effect after 30 minutes, and he assumed this was because his chakra reserves were much larger than those of the plants and small animals they had tested on previously. The danger of chakra exhaustion was another thing they learned about. Tyrant would faint from overexertion if he used Curse twice in a short period of time. Fortunately, when they tried it, it took the creature only roughly 5 hours to recover completely. It was evident that the technique was effective, but it had serious limitations, and Naruto had to be careful not to push Tyrant too hard. After 10 minutes, the first students began to arrive. Most of them started chatting and whispering as soon as they saw Naruto, but he didn't mind until two loud voices came from the doorway. "First," exclaimed a girl with pink hair, a big forehead, and a scarlet cheapao outfit. Her hair was held up with a headband. A blonde girl wearing a purple crop top and skirt with bandages showing through the bottom argued, "No, clearly I was first, forehead." She had a ponytail and a long strand of hair hanging down the right side of her face. "Eno, pig." Forehead. A kid with spiky hair, wearing a light jacket and gray leggings with chainmail underneath and a weapon bag strapped over his right knee, murmured, "Troublesome," as he pushed by the two girls. Before the two females could give him their entire attention, they noticed a boy in the third row, silently brooding with his face resting on his hands. Together, the two girls exclaimed, "Sasuke," and hurried to seat next to the person they were in love with, each attempting to outsmart the other. With a sorrowful grin, Naruto shook his head. He had long admired Sakura, but she had only eyes for Sasuke. Despite his best efforts, Sasuke was always the one she fell in love with. This hurt, but Naruto had learned to accept it because he was no longer the same child and had other priorities, such as Tyrant, his training, and his goal of becoming Hokage. Tyrant, who appeared to be unobserved and unaware of the human drama taking place, only observed the chaos with interest. When the youngster with the spiky hair reached the last row, he remarked, "Morning, Naruto." Naruto said, "Morning, Shikamaru," without raising his head. Shikamaru saw that the chair was already taken as he pulled it back to sit. He raised an eyebrow, shrugged, and sat down next the odd creature. "Not going to ask?" asked Naruto. With his head resting on the desk, the lethargic Nara responded, "Too troublesome." They came to an understanding that Shikamaru was Naruto's sole true friend. Although Shikamaru occasionally thought Naruto was annoying, particularly when he was noisy or played a practical joke, Shikamaru was one of the few people who could see past Naruto's mask. "Where is Choji?" inquired Naruto. "Brought too little food, he didn't account for the excitement so he went to get some," said the Nara. In the final row, there was silence. "When did they tell you?" inquired Shikamaru. 3 days ago. When did you find out?" Naruto asked after pausing for a bit. "Around 3 years ago. It wasn't hard, I just had to do some research to figuring out why everyone hated you and called you a demon. The only demon I knew of was the Ninetales, which coincidentally attacked on your birthday. A bit of digging and I discovered that Bijou can't be killed and are sealed into newborns. Don't worry, I know how to differentiate the kunai from the seal." "Thanks," Naruto said, a little taken aback but appreciative. "So what about? You will now be assigned to your teams," Iruka shouted, still sporting a little battered appearance. Sakura yelled, "Let me be with Sasuke." The blonde female added, "Shut up, forehead. I'm going to be on Sasuke's team." Troublesome, Shikamaru and Naruto both sighed simultaneously. Choji entered with his arms stuffed with food as the door opened once more. Iruka said, "Please take a seat." Next to Shikamaru, Choji nodded and let himself down. "Now," Iruka responded, "Team 1, Sora Takahashi, Yui Nakamura, Kenta Yamaguchi, Jonin Sensei Hikaru Sato. Team 2. Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha, Jonin Sensei Kakashi Hatake." "Yeah!" Sakura exclaimed with joy. Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, Kiba Inazuka, Jonin Sensei Kurinai Yuhi. Team 9 is still in rotation from last year. Team 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, Jonin Sensei, Asuma Sarutobi. When Naruto finally had enough, he shoved his chair back with a yell, attracting the attention of Sakura and Sasuke and rousing Tyrant from his slumber. Naruto then got up and started walking toward the front of the room, with Tyrant drowsily trailing behind him. A loud cry came from behind him as he got to the door. Sakura pointed at Tyrant with disgust and yelled, "Where do you think you're going? And what the hell is that?" Naruto turned around and glanced at Sasuke. Unlike Sakura, Sasuke's eyes were curious as he examined Tyrant. After a moment of seeing Sakura with increasing annoyance, Naruto looked down at Tyrant, who had fully awakened and was now observing the chaos with his head inclined in perplexity. "What's it to you?" Naruto calmly remarked, "Tyrant's my partner. It looks weird, like some kind of oversized lizard. Are you seriously planning on bringing that thing along on missions?" Sakura said, crossing her arms while keeping her expression contorted in disdain. "He's stronger than you think," Naruto said calmly while clenching his fists. After remaining silent till now, Sasuke asked, "Where did you get it?" "I summoned him," Naruto said, turning his attention in his direction, somewhat taken aback by the inquiry. Asking, "You know how to use summoning jutsu?" Sasuke arched an eyebrow. With a little smile, Naruto said, "Yeah, I do now. Even if you did summon it, that doesn't mean it's useful, Naruto," sneered Sakura, who maintained her skepticism. "Whatever you say," Naruto said calmly as his smile dimmed. The door opened before Sakura could respond, revealing a tall man with silver hair that defied gravity, a mask covering the lower portion of his face, and a highlight covering his left eye. He entered the room and looked languidly at the three of them. "Team 7, he inquired in a bored tone. Sakura screamed, "You're late," and directed her annoyance at the newcomer. The man sighed and remarked, "My first impression is that you're noisy." He added nonchalantly, "We're meeting on the roof in 5 minutes," and then vanished in a flurry of leaves. Sasuke discreetly followed them as Naruto turned to face Tyrant before making his way to the door, Sakura still glaring at him. "My name is Kakashi Hatake. Before we start anything, let's do some introductions, you know, your likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, stuff like that," he said, pausing before continuing. "How about you start, Pinkhead?" After they arrived at the roof and found the masked man leaning casually against the railing and idly checking them over. With her hands clasped together, Sakura turned to face Kakashi and said, "I'm Sakura Haruno. My likes are." She glanced quickly at Sasuke, her face flushed red, and said, "I mean, the person I like is." Another look at Sasuke, and her blush deepened, "My dislikes." Her eyes narrowed as she gave Naruto a glare, "Naruto. And my dream." She looked dreamily at Sasuke, omitting the rest of her introduction. "Aha." Next, Kakashi said, nodding, his obvious eyes showing little interest. "Sasuke Uchiha, there are few things I like, and many things I dislike, as for my dream," he said, sitting with his arms crossed and a brooding expression on his face. His hands clenched slightly. "No, it's not a dream, it's a reality. I will restore my clan and kill a certain someone," he said. Admiring Sasuke's earnestness, Sakura blushed even more. Kakashi nodded slowly, saying, "Right, and last but not least, you." "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," he said with confidence as he stepped forward. "I like instant ramen, especially the ramen at Ichiraku. I also like my partner, Tyrant." He patted the creature on the head, which caused Tyrant to growl enthusiastically. "I dislike the 3 minutes it takes for ramen to cook, and people who don't know anything about me," he said with a wide smile that showed his determination. "My dream is to become Hokage, so everyone will finally recognize me." "And the creature?" Kakashi asked, raising an eyebrow. Glancing down at Tyrant, who was seated beside him, Naruto looked up curiously at Kakashi. "Oh, this is Tyrant. He's my partner, and we've been training together. He's gonna help me get stronger and become Hokage," Naruto said. "Interesting. Well, now that we've got introductions out of the way, we'll begin our first mission tomorrow morning, but first." Kakashi's eye crinkled slightly, as if he were grinning beneath his mask, when he glanced from Naruto to Tyrant. "We'll be doing some survival training," he said. "Survival training?" Sakura inquired, seeming perplexed. With a hint of sarcasm in his voice, Kakashi answered, "Yeah, think of it as a test. I'll explain everything tomorrow, and one more thing." He stopped for dramatic effect, then said, "Don't eat breakfast, you'll just end up puking." Naruto woke up early the following morning and paced his tiny apartment with Tyrant following him. In spite of Kakashi's warning, his stomach rumbled, reminding him how much he enjoyed eating, particularly ramen, but he clenched his teeth and resisted. Kakashi had stated, "Don't eat breakfast, or you'll puke," and he believed it was a ruse to remove the weak. "Ready for today, buddy?" Naruto asked, smiling as he knelt down to stroke Tyrant on the head. Tyrant, who was still half asleep but attempting to keep up with him, gave a little yawn. Tyrant's tiny, pointed teeth gleamed as he growled in agreement. "That's the spirit." Naruto laughed, "We're gonna show Kakashi-sensei what we're made of, there's no way I'm failing some lame test." However, Naruto couldn't get rid of the fear Kakashi had ingrained in him. "A survival test, huh? I get the feeling, that's not going to be all there is to it, we had too many of them at Ninja Academy," he observed, tapping his foot. After gathering his belongings, he set off with Tyrant by his side. The chilly morning air brushed Naruto's face as he traveled to the training fields. When Naruto arrived, he saw Sasuke standing there with his hands in his pockets and his face as composed and uninterested as ever. Sakura was also there, obviously attempting to talk to Sasuke, but he was ignoring her. She saw Naruto coming and glared at him, obviously unhappy with his presence, or perhaps Tyrant's, now that he considered it, probably both. Sakura folded her arms in a huff and said, "You're actually early. I'm not going to be the one holding us up," Naruto retorted. She rolled her eyes and swiftly returned her focus to Sasuke, who had not even recognized Naruto's entrance. Tyrant gazed up at Sasuke with interest, seemingly attempting to comprehend the Uchiha's austere demeanor. After a few minutes, an hour later, as the sun rose higher in the sky and Kakashi was still nowhere to be seen, Naruto's stomach began to growl loudly. Tyrant mirrored Naruto's groaning and holding of his gut, yawning as though he was exhausted from waiting. "Man, I should have eaten something," Naruto said. "He said to not eat breakfast, idiot," Sakura groaned. Naruto grumbled, "Yeah, but it's been hours. How long does he expect us to wait?" After remaining quiet, Sasuke finally said, "It's a test, he's trying to mess with us." "You think so?" Naruto asked, his eyes widening. "Of course Naruto Baka, if Sasuke-kun says so it is definitely true," Sakura said. Sasuke remained silent, staring off into space. An additional hour passed before the well-known Kakashi Hatake emerged in a tangle of leaves, walking toward them with his hands in his pockets and his eyes half closed in his typical lethargic fashion. Sakura yelled, "You're late," with a tone of annoyance in her voice. "Sorry, I got lost on the path of life," Kakashi said, scratching the back of his head as if indifferent. The words, "You've gotta be kidding me," were clenched by Naruto. "Now that you're all here, it's time for your test," Kakashi said, ignoring the outcry. He reached inside his vest and produced 2 silver bells that were strung to strings. He held them up so that everyone could see them. "Your objective is simple, you need to take these bells from me," he said. With a bewildered blink, Naruto said, "That's it? We just have to grab the bells." "Yeah, but there's a catch," said Kakashi, grinning, gesturing to the bells, "there are only 2, so one of you will fail the test and be sent back to the academy." "But, there's 3 of us," Sakura said. "Exactly, so, if you don't want to be the one left behind, I suggest you give it your all," Kakashi said calmly as he fastened the bells to his belt and crossed his arms in anticipation. "No way I'm going back to the academy." Naruto felt a wave of resolve wash over him. Kakashi remarked, "Start whenever you're ready," while leaning against a nearby tree and appearing completely unconcerned. Sasuke and Sakura instantly rushed into the bushes upon hearing this, leaving Naruto and the rather bewildered Tyrant by themselves with Kakashi. "I'm gonna get those bells, believe it." Tyrant, tail whip, said Naruto as he rushed forward without hesitation, Tyrant by his side. Tyrant turned around and waved his tail in response to this. The Jonin, who was still observing the tiny thing with curiosity, felt lethargic all of a sudden. His gut warned him that it would not be wise to get struck right now. However, the Jonin abruptly vanished in a swirl of movement before Naruto could get to Kakashi. Naruto skidded to a stop, his gaze flitting around. What? Where'd he go? He's fast, said Sasuke, who was hidden in the nearby bushes and narrowed his eyes as he scanned the area. As Naruto turned to look for Kakashi, he heard someone say, "You're way too hasty, Naruto," from behind him. As if totally uninterested in the battle, Kakashi was standing directly behind Naruto, holding a book in one hand. However, if one looked closely, one could see that Kakashi was watching Tyrant. Before Naruto could react, Kakashi flicked him on the forehead, sending him flying back several feet and landing on the ground. Tyrant growled and attempted to charge at Kakashi, but the Jonin sidestepped with ease, still apparently absorbed in his book. Kakashi stated, "Patience is key," without even looking up from his book. "Ugh, how is he so fast?" Naruto moaned, sitting up and massaging his forehead. With a resolute snarl, Naruto charged once more, but this time he was more cautious, and Tyrant was just behind him, prepared to strike at any moment. "You really don't learn, do you?" Kakashi asked with a sigh as he turned another page in his book. While Tyrant approached from the side, his little legs moving quickly as he prepared to bite down on Kakashi's thigh, Naruto leaped into the air, removing multiple shuriken and hurling them at Kakashi. However, Kakashi disappeared once more and resurfaced in midair behind Naruto, saying, "Too predictable." Kakashi quickly caught Naruto by the ankle and swung him to the ground. Tyrant yelled as Naruto fell to the ground, sending dust flying in all directions. Kakashi reiterated, "Patience," as he stood above Naruto. "To pass this test, you'll need more than brute force." One idea blazed brightly in Naruto's thoughts despite the pain as he lay on the ground, gasping for air and having fuzzy vision. "I'm not going back to the academy, no way. Tyrant isn't giving up, so neither will I," Naruto thought, clenching his fists as he moaned and pushed himself up from the earth. His head was spinning, but his resolve remained steadfast. He looked over at Tyrant, who was crouching low and growling angrily at Kakashi. "You really don't know when to quit, huh? Well, I guess I'll just have to keep teaching you," Kakashi sighed softly, remaining deep in concentration on his book. "You think I'm just gonna quit, 'cause you knocked me down? Think again," Naruto said, stumbling to his feet and glared at the Jonin. Tyrant bared its teeth and snarled in accord. Naruto ordered, "Okay, Tyrant, let's try something different, use tackle." When Tyrant sprang forward, putting all of its weight into the attack, Kakashi was quicker and sidestepped just before Tyrant's teeth touched his jeans. In a split second, Kakashi vanished, reappearing a few feet away and absent-mindedly turning to the next page of his book. "You're relying too much on direct attacks," Kakashi said. "You'll never win that way." Frustrated, Naruto gritted his teeth and asked himself, "Why is this guy so strong? And why does he hardly make an effort? What am I overlooking?" He required a more effective plan. "You're a genin and I'm a jonin, so you can't defeat me, Naruto," the silver-haired man stated. Naruto tried everything in his arsenal over the course of the next 10 minutes, but to no avail. Had it not been for Tyrant, he would have nearly fallen for one of Kakashi's tricks. The thought of it made him wince. He remembered an instance in which he nearly got the bells by making clones to divert Kakashi, but the Jonin used kawarimi with one of them. Now, he was hanging from a tree with both feet bound. Tyrant had given up attempting to reach the rope and was now seated beneath the tree, staring expectantly at Naruto while striving to cut himself free by rope. A scream reverberated across the training area. Sakura. Naruto reasoned that Kakashi must have reached her. The rope broke with a final cut, and he fell, barely turning to avoid landing on his head. Naruto looked at Tyrant and saw the Pokemon sniffing the air, but he was too busy trying to free himself to notice anything other than a rustle in the leaves. He looked up and saw Tyrant's little tail vanish into a bush, so he got up and followed the creature. The Pokemon contentedly nibbled on a closed bento box while he took a minute to locate Tyrant, who was seated in front of a stone etched with numerous names. When Naruto saw the second bento, his eyes shone. He was about to devour when he was knocked unconscious by a cut to his neck. When Naruto awoke, he was bound to a wooden post at the monument, with Tyrant sitting in front of him, appearing to be a helpless dummy at the apparently enraged Kakashi, Sakura to his left, and Sasuke on his right. With a trace of humor in his voice, Kakashi remarked, "Well, at least one thing is clear, you definitely don't belong in the academy, yeah." Sakura and Naruto exclaimed together, but Sasuke just grinned. "You should give up being a shinobi altogether," Kakashi added in a serious tone. "What?" all three cried, their faces displaying astonishment. "Do you take this as a joke? Do you think you can succeed alone? There's a reason for three-man squads, this test was about teamwork," Kakashi said, crossing his arms and maintaining an unblinking glare. Sakura complained, looking perplexed, "But there are only two bells." "Yes, and I used it to pit you against each other to see if you could overcome your differences," Kakashi said with a firm tone. "Sakura, you're too obsessed with Sasuke, Naruto, you're always trying to do everything on your own, and Sasuke, you think both of them are beneath you. If even one of you puts yourselves above the others, it could lead to mission failure, and even death." "Look at this stone," Kakashi said solemnly as he approached the stone monument. "This stone is a reminder of those who gave their lives for the village," he said, pointing to the surface where the names of his closest friends were carved beneath the names of deceased ninjas. The significance of the stone was revealed, and the three of them appeared stunned, the words of Kakashi bearing down on them. "Okay, I'll give you one more chance after lunch," Kakashi said, turning around to face them. "Eat something, you'll need strength, but Naruto is forbidden from having anything, giving him something will lead to immediate failure." The blonde forced a smile and screamed, "Don't worry, guys. I can go days without food, believe it." Holding out his bento to Naruto, Sasuke groaned and shook his head. "Here, eat some, if you don't, you'll be ineffective," he said. Sakura said, worry etched on her face, "But Sensei said." Sasuke cut in, his voice determined, "Well, we need his help," saying, "We can't afford to leave him weak." When Sasuke offered, Naruto's eyes glowed and he said, "Thanks, Sasuke. You're the best." Sakura observed, caught between her concern and the situation's obvious logic. "Just, make sure Kakashi-sensei doesn't see," she cautioned, scanning the area for Kakashi. "We'll figure this out together, but for now, we need to stay strong," Sasuke said with a nod, his resolve evident. There was a huge blast, a lot of smoke, and an irate Kakashi just as Sasuke offered Naruto the first taste. You broke the rules, I hope you're ready for the punishment, any last words?" The sky darkened as Kakashi made hand signals. "But you said, there are three of us and that we're a team, that's why they helped me," Naruto said. We're all on this squad, and we're all in this together, said Sasuke. Exactly, Sakura said, we are all 3-1. Kakashi leaned forward and approached carefully, asking, the three of you are one? Kakashi's look softened abruptly, and a faint smile pulled at his lips. You pass, he said. Sakura said, blinking bewilderedly, huh? You pass, Kakashi said again, this time with greater conviction. Sakura's brows wrinkled as she asked, what do you mean? Kakashi raised his arms and explained, it's simple, you placed your team ahead of the mission. In the shinobi world, those who don't follow the rules are considered trash, but those who abandon their friends are worse than trash. To become a true shinobi, you must learn to see underneath the underneath. You're the first group that managed to pass my test, every other team before you followed my rule to the letter. Sakura exclaimed, yeah, as her face lit up with enthusiasm. Naruto, unable to contain his happiness, began to cry, his eyes wide and filling with passion. Sasuke, however, only grinned, his eyes glimmering with the tiniest bit of pride. Team 7 has passed, you'll have your first mission tomorrow, Kakashi said, glancing at the three of them in a casual tone once more. Tyrant was occupied finishing the second bento while the gang cheered, totally unaware of what was going on. After saying, let's go, Kakashi pivoted on his heel and left, Sakura and Sasuke trailing closely behind. Watching their receding figures, Naruto blinked and yelled, wait, hey! You forgot something, as he struggled against the post. You gotta untie me. The three teammates' backs gradually faded into the background, leaving Tyrant and Naruto in their wake. Oh, come on. Tyrant, could you please help me out and bite off the rope? Naruto moaned in exasperation as he sagged against the post. Naruto exhaled in relief as Tyrant gave him a lazy glance before trotting over and starting to nibble at the ropes with its tiny teeth. Naruto murmured to himself, they're going to regret this, but before he could express his annoyance, there was a loud chomp. Beside his feet, the ropes that had been holding him fell to the ground in a heap. What just happened? Naruto asked, staring with startled eyes. He glanced down to see Tyrant pursuing a butterfly, preoccupied as though nothing had just happened. Naruto yelled out, scratching his head in bewilderment, hey, Tyrant, asking, how were you able to free me so fast? Naruto could only sigh, a tiny smile appearing on his face in spite of himself, while Tyrant remained silent, still staring at the butterfly. Whatever, Tyrant, let's go home, Naruto remarked, grinning and shaking his head. He got up and dusted himself down before turning back to face the village after taking one more look at the stone monument and bowing slightly in recognition of the names of the departed. He yelled out, come on, Tyrant, and the creature awoke to his call, putting aside its preoccupation with the butterfly and joyfully following Naruto at a trot. Naruto took a deep breath and began to move as the sun started to set. Later that day, the office of the Hokage. A handsome woman with long black hair, red eyes, and a dress that appeared to be made of bandages but somehow fit her perfectly stood in front of the elderly man in the red and white Hokage outfit, who was seated behind a large desk full of paperwork. Next to her was a tall man with tan skin, short, spiky hair, a beard, and a cigarette in his mouth, who was wearing the traditional Konoha flak vest. Kurenai Yuhi, the recently appointed sensei of Team 8, said, reporting, Lord Hokage, in a calm yet authoritative voice. Team 8, which includes Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame, has passed the Genin test. Ah, Kurenai, that's good to hear, said the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, looking up from his paperwork and smiling softly and knowingly. He folded his hands in front of him and asked, "And how did the team perform?" "I trust the test gave them the opportunity to demonstrate teamwork. They worked well together. Hinata showed her potential as a support ninja, Kiba's instincts are sharp, and Shino, well, he's very calm under pressure," Kurenai said, nodding, but her eyes briefly strayed to her companion, Asuma Sarutobi, who was standing behind her with her arms crossed and appeared at ease. "You sound proud of them already," Asuma said with a smile as she turned to face Kurenai. "I am, they'll make a good team," she said with a small smile. As he thought about her statement, each of them have their own problems, Hinata's self-confidence, Kiba's brashness, and Shino with his detachment, but I trust they're in good hands with you, Kurenai. Hiruzen nodded slowly, his facial creases deepening. Kurenai said, "Thank you, Lord Hokage," bowing. "And what of your team?" the Hokage asked Asuma, turning his focus to her. Asuma laughed and rubbed his beard. Team 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akimichi, passed as well, though I'd say they're a little unconventional. Shikamaru's got talent but it's all too troublesome for him, Choji's strong but needs more confidence, and Ino well, she's driven but needs to focus her energy in the right places. Hiruzen laughed. "That sounds familiar, you have quite the legacy to uphold, Asuma. The Ino Shikacho formation has been passed down for generations. I'll whip them into shape, don't worry about that," Asuma said, grinning as she nodded. "It's good to see the next generation taking their first steps, but remember, their path won't be easy. In times of peace, shinobi still have much to learn. Teamwork, discipline, and loyalty, guide them well," the Hokage said, leaning back in his chair and looking thoughtfully. "Yes, Lord Hokage," Kurenai and Asuma bowed together. "Enter," Hiruzen said as he looked up at the knock on the door. The door creaked open, and Kakashi Hatake entered, appearing as casual as ever with his hands in his pockets and his eyes half-lidded. His silver hair stood up at strange angles, and the mask covering his face gave him an even more relaxed appearance. With a smirk tugging at the edges of his mouth, the Hokage said, "Ah, Kakashi, how did your team fare?" "Well, they passed, barely," Kakashi waved lazily. "Barely?" Asuma asked, raising an eyebrow. Kakashi sighed, "They figured out the teamwork part eventually, gave Naruto a good scare, though. It seems you haven't changed your methods, Kakashi," the Hokage said with a quiet laugh. "No need to fix what works," Kakashi said with his signature eye grin as his eye curved upward. "Very well, Team 7, Team 8, and Team 10 are all officially active. Their first missions will begin tomorrow, be sure to guide them wisely," Hiruzen said with a smile of affection as he nodded. Asuma and Kurenai looked at each other before bowing again and leaving the office, while Kakashi gave a slack salute before turning to go. The hamlet was at peace for the time being, but Hiruzen Sarutobi knew better than anyone that peace was brittle, so he sat back in his chair and stared at the piles of papers and mission requests stacked high on his desk as the door closed behind them. Thinking of the young people who would soon be taking on the duties of shinobi, he thought quietly to himself, the new generation. "Let's hope they're ready for what lies ahead," he said. Kurenai and Asuma stood outside the Hokage Tower in the gentle glow of the setting sun, with the hamlet teeming with activity all around them. Asuma lit a cigarette and stated, "So, first mission tomorrow, excited?" "Excited isn't the word I'd use, more like cautious optimism," Kurenai said with a smile and crossed arms. Asuma laughed and exhaled smoke. "That's why you'll do great," she said. "And you?" "Team 10 sounds like a handful," Kurenai said, glancing directly at him. "They are," Asuma grinned and acknowledged, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The two spent some quiet time together, observing the village's serene routine. The sound of a little bird fluttering outside the window momentarily disturbed Hiruzen's thoughts as he sat alone in the Hokage's office. He got up and moved to the window, looking out at the hamlet below. He muttered to himself, "This peace, it's only a matter of time," in a voice that was difficult to hear. He had been carrying a terrible burden for many years, but for the time being, he could only have faith that Konoha's future was in capable hands. Outside the tower, the wind swirled softly, bearing with it the promise of both uncertainty and hope. Hiruzen's irate yell, "Damn it, Minato! I had already retired," reverberated through the quiet night and the village streets. As the third Hokage sank back into his chair, a few startled birds fled, startled by his outburst. The quiet night returned, yet he let out a small laugh. "Naruto is back." Tyrant cheerfully trotted alongside Naruto as he made his way through the woods toward the town, pausing sometimes to sniff the air or explore the odd bush or flower. Despite the forest's tranquility, Naruto's thoughts was racing. With a smile on his face, he thought, "I can't believe we actually passed, I thought for sure we were done for." However, despite his want to celebrate, the significance of Kakashi's words remained in his thoughts. "Teamwork, that's what it's all about, huh? You and me, buddy, we gotta get stronger if we're gonna make it as shinobi, no more going at it alone," Naruto said, laughing as he looked down at Tyrant, who was now hopping and snapping gleefully while attempting to catch a butterfly once more. Before finally grabbing the butterfly and letting it go a moment later, Tyrant gave him a gentle growl of agreement. Naruto shook his head and laughed to himself. "Man, I could really go for some ramen right now," Naruto moaned, covering his empty stomach as they got closer to the village gates. His stomach growled again, reminding him of the bento he had not been able to eat. Sensing that his trainer was hungry, Tyrant pushed Naruto's leg with its head while gazing up with its typical ebullient enthusiasm. "You're hungry too, huh? Alright, let's hit it Shiraku's, it's been a long day, and I think we deserve a reward for passing Kakashi-sensei's test." Thus, a youngster and his Pokemon traveled to their preferred location, the peace of the night broken only by the distant cries of an irate man. Now that he had well-balanced shuriken and kunai, Naruto's aim was getting better, though his throws still veered off course more often than he'd like. Tyrant darted nimbly, dodging the spinning projectiles with sharp, playful movements. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The atmosphere was quiet except for the rhythmic thunk of shuriken hitting a nearby tree and Tyrant's playful growls. "Good one, Tyrant," said Naruto. "Next time, try jumping between the trees while dodging. Believe it, we're gonna be unstoppable." "You're wasting your energy," he replied coolly, looking up from his position under a tree's shade. "That training is useless, Dobe," he said. "Oh, yeah. And what are you doing, huh?" "Sitting there like a log," glared Naruto as he spun around. "At least I'm not making a fool of myself," said Sasuke, leaning back with his arms crossed, refusing to fall for the ruse. Naruto said, "Why you?" but was interrupted when Sakura suddenly stood up, her voice piercing. "Quiet down, Naruto. Sasuke-kun knows what he's talking about, if you actually listened for once, maybe you wouldn't be so far behind." Despite her forceful tone, she kept her eyes on Sasuke, who moved uneasily while she was watching him. Whenever he attempted to move, she mirrored him like a shadow. "Tch, of course, you take his side," Naruto sighed, crossing his arms. Tyrant hissed faintly, seemingly in agreement. A plume of smoke came on the bridge, showing Kakashi with his nose buried in his always-present book, before the simmering debate could get out of hand. "Good morning, Team 7, he said in a relaxed tone. Naruto screamed, accusing him with a finger, "You're late." "Oh, you're right, my bad, you see, I had to take the long way after running into a black cat, then I assisted an elderly woman in crossing the street, and..." Kakashi looked up, seeming to be surprised. Together, Naruto and Sakura yelled, "Liar," with the latter emphasizing it with an irate stomp. Typical, Sasuke merely mumbled, shaking his head. "Alright, today's an exciting day for you three, your very first official mission as a team," said Kakashi, clapping his hands together without any concern. Naruto's face lightened up. Finally. "So what's the mission?" "Something cool, like taking down bandits or guarding a VIP?" As he said, "Not quite, you'll be handling a D-rank mission." Kakashi's eye wrinkled in laughter. With his enthusiasm waning, Naruto repeated, "A D-rank? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Kakashi said, "you'll be doing essential tasks that support the village, you'll see after we arrive at the mission office." 10 minutes later, Team 7 was standing in a spacious room with long desks and broad windows. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, was seated behind a desk with a number of Chunin, including Iruka. With a confident stance, Naruto said, "Hey, old man. We're here for our first mission. Don't be disrespectful to the Hokage." Iruka yelled, his head appearing to enlarge in size. "Naruto!" Sakura screamed, "Exactly," and, just for good measure, smacked Naruto's skull. Hiruzen giggled as he raised his hand to calm, now, settle down, everyone. "Hello, Naruto-kun, ready for your first mission, are you?" "Let's see. We have several options: finding the missing cat Tora, helping the Yamashitas with their chores, or assisting in the rice fields." Kakashi joyfully stated, "We'll take the chores," his mask revealing a familiar smile. "Chores? You've gotta be kidding me. That's not a mission, that's housework," Naruto said, his mouth dropping. Iruka sighed. "Naruto, missions like these are important, not everything is about fighting, D-rank missions generate a significant portion of the village's revenue." "He's right," replied Kakashi, "these tasks build teamwork and discipline, besides, every great shinobi started with humble tasks. Now, let's get moving." When the team reached a modest home with a little garden, an elderly woman met them at the gate, a warm smile spreading across her wrinkled face. "Oh, thank you for coming, young ones, my name is Mia, I've been struggling to keep up with everything lately," Naruto exclaimed, swelled his breast, "No problem, old lady. Leave it to us." "Such a lively little one you have there," Tyrant said with a cheerful growl, causing Mia to laugh. "Here's what needs to be done: the woodpile needs to be restocked, the garden needs to be weeded, and there are a few loose tiles on the roof that need to be fixed," it said. Kakashi instantly assumed command. "Alright, let's split up the tasks. Sasuke, you're good with balance, so you'll handle the roof. Sakura, take the garden. Naruto, you and Tyrant can restock the woodpile." Naruto objected, saying, "What? Why does Sasuke get the roof? I can do that too." Sakura angrily said, "Leave it to someone capable, you'll just mess it up." "Naruto, strength is needed for the woodpile, it's perfect for you," Kakashi said as Naruto reacted angrily. Tyrant trotted faithfully behind Naruto as he stomped off toward the logs, complaining, "Fine." Sasuke moved across the roof with ease, replacing tiles with precision, and Sakura weeded the garden with care, glancing at him when she thought no one was looking. Meanwhile, Naruto struggled with the woodpile, complaining under his breath as he carried logs back and forth, and Tyrant helped by clamping its jaws around smaller pieces of wood, proudly adding them to the pile. Unfortunately, Kakashi had not permitted him to use his shadow clones, which would have made things much easier. Now, however, he was only able to finish about 30 minutes later than the rest of his team. As Mia patted Tyrant's head and said, "Good job, little one," the Pokemon excitedly wagged its tail. "Man, this is way harder than it looks. How's everyone else done already?" Naruto said, wiping perspiration from his brow before collapsing next to the woodpile. Sasuke responded, "I finished ages ago," and landed lightly next to him. "The garden's spotless," Sakura continued, wiping the dirt off her gloves. "Of course you two are already done," moaned Naruto. Still deep in concentration on his book, Kakashi remarked, "Well, that just leaves cleanup. Good teamwork, everyone." Naruto whispered, "Teamwork? It feels more like I'm doing all the work." When they were done, the sun was already high in the sky, and Mia gave them a basket of fresh veggies as a thank you gift. "You've all been such a big help, thank you," she remarked kindly. "Although, no problem, old lady. Call us anytime," Naruto said with a smile as he accepted the basket. "So, when do we get a real mission?" Naruto asked Kakashi as the group made their way back toward the village. "When you've proven you're ready, for now, focus on building trust and teamwork," Kakashi said with a smile without raising his head. "Guess we've got a long way to go, huh?" Naruto murmured, looking down at Tyrant. With a gentle snarl of accord, Tyrant gave Naruto's leg a loving prod. Team 7 dispersed after a brief training session during which Kakashi allowed the three of them to spar, giving them tiny hints here and there. Tyrant and Naruto headed toward Ichiraka Ramen, excited to spend his first mission money on his favorite meal. "I guess it's not so horrible," Naruto thought as they walked through the village, recalling Kakashi's remarks on teamwork. He looked at Tyrant trotting beside him, thinking, "At least I'm not doing this alone." Naruto was startled out of his reverie by a soft tap on his leg. When he looked down, he saw Tyrant staring up at him with anticipation and wagging its tail. Naruto laughed, all right, let's get some ramen, you earned it, partner." When they reached Ichiraka Ramen, the air was filled with the enticing smell of noodles and broth. Naruto pushed back the curtain and entered to see two familiar faces seated and eating. Shikamaru looked over his shoulder, his face as composed as ever. "Oh, hey Shikamaru," Naruto said. "Didn't see you yesterday, so you passed, huh?" "Yeah, I see you did too, congrats," Shikamaru said with a lazy smirk. "Thanks. Can I join?" Naruto said, plopping onto the stool next to him and motioning Tyrant to take a seat at his feet. Shikamaru remarked, moving slightly to create room, "Sure, why not?" With a broad smile and food-filled cheeks, Choji, who was seated beside him, said, "Hey, Naruto. First mission done. Did you get something cool?" Naruto let out a sigh, not even close, it was just chores, wood piles and gardening. Kakashi-sensei called it team building or something. What about you? Sounds like a drag, Shikamaru said, raising an eyebrow in a dry tone. Seeing that Shikamaru was also too slothful, Choji responded, "We had to find the missing cat of the fire daimyo's wife. I could have sworn that thing is possessed, it was hell." When Ayam placed 2 warm bowls of ramen in front of Naruto, his face brightened. "But hey, at least it's over." "And nothing beats ramen after a long day," Naruto exclaimed. "Don't worry, buddy, I ordered some for you too, Naruto said, laughing as he placed one of the bowls in front of Tyrant, who gave him a little, eager growl. With a contented sigh, Choji put down his third empty bowl and said, "By the way, Naruto, who's your friend?" Naruto said, "This is Tyrant, my summon," accelerating his pace as he saw Teuchi coming with the second bowl of ramen. From behind the counter, I.M peered carefully at the tiny dinosaur and said, "Isn't that kind of rare?" "It is," Shikamaru replied, his curiosity now somewhat piqued. Summoning contracts are usually passed down through clans or from master to student. There are also a lot of contracts that have been lost over time, and some that have never been found at all, still hidden away with their respective animal clans. Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled sheepishly. He, sorry guys, but I can't really tell you where I got it. Ji-san told me to keep it a secret, he said. Naruto felt a little uneasy as Shikamaru gazed at him for a considerable amount of time before mumbling softly, "Troublesome blondes," and returning to his ramen. Shikamaru laughed at Naruto's enthusiasm as the three boys chatted while they ate, with Naruto entertaining them with inflated stories about how he carried the team through their mission, not to mention how Kakashi prohibited him from using his shadow clones to assist. Choji nodded enthusiastically in between bites of his own food. The company eventually finished their meal as the sun began to set, streaking the sky in pink and orange. I.M set a tiny plate of leftovers on the floor for Tyrant, who gobbled them up with relish. Shikamaru stretched as he rose up and said, "Well, I guess I'll go home. We have another mission early tomorrow. See you around, Naruto." With a satisfied touch on his stomach, Choji said, "Yeah, later," and followed Shikamaru out. Maybe Kakashi-sensei's right, teamwork might not be so bad, and I've got Tyrant, too. Guess I'm not as alone as I used to be, Naruto said as he leaned back with his hands resting on his full stomach and Tyrant curled up contentedly next to him. He saw the fading sunlight through the shop window with a slight smile on his lips. "You ready for more adventures, buddy?" he asked, stroking the Pokémon behind its crest as he glanced down at his companion. Naruto chuckled as the small thing growled with pleasure and wagging its tail. "Good, because this is just the beginning," he said. The hamlet was quiet, the lanterns lighting softly as the stars started to peek out overhead, and Naruto thanked Teuchi and I.M as they stepped back into the street. Over the course of the following few weeks, Team 7 finished 26 D-rank missions, most of which were routine chores like weeding gardens, walking the Inuzuka dogs, and getting groceries, hardly the stuff of legends. Their training sessions stayed mostly the same, with Naruto and Sasuke sparring while Kakashi buried himself in his constant book. Sakura, on the other hand, spent most of her time observing Sasuke, concentrating more on her admiration for him than the actual sparring. Sakura would yell at Sasuke like a banshee whenever Naruto managed to land a solid hit on him. This incessant interruption eventually annoyed even Sasuke, who sternly reprimanded her. Sakura then fell silent, keeping her eyes down whenever Naruto and Sasuke sparred. Although it was a minor change, Naruto silently appreciated the newfound calm. The day after Naruto graduated, he went to the Hokage's office to take his ninja photo and formally register Tyrant as his animal companion. This was the first memorable encounter between Naruto and Konohamaru, the Hokage's grandson, with whom he frequently met on his days off. Angry and humiliated, Konohamaru accused Naruto of tripping him. Naruto quickly gave him a wake-up call with a gentle tap on the head, which only made Konohamaru more obstinate. Konohamaru had stormed into the room, trying what he dramatically called an assassination of his grandfather, but instead he tripped on his scarf and face-planted in the middle of the office. Konohamaru started following Naruto everywhere after he fled from his private tutor, Ebisu, and declared him his boss. Emboldened by the child's perseverance, Naruto taught him the Oiroke no Jutsu, a transformation technique that is sure to make most men blush. Later that day, Konohamaru used it on Ebisu, and as if that wasn't enough, he used a somewhat advanced combination of Kage Bunshin and Oiroke no Jutsu, ultimately defeating him. Naruto couldn't stop laughing as the agitated tutor gained the moniker, Closet Pervert. Despite their pranks, Konohamaru quickly declared Naruto his adversary after being moved by his self-assurance and tenacity. However, Naruto's days weren't just about training and tricks. He unexpectedly grew close to Sasuke, albeit not in a pleasant way, as they both became frustrated with Sakura's antics. Their shared moments, such as complaining about her frequent interruptions during sparring, helped to soften the intensity of their rivalry. Team 7 also had their share of adventures. One particularly memorable one was when they tried to figure out what Kakashi looked like behind his mask. They tried everything from complex traps to straightforward deception, but none of their schemes worked since Kakashi was always one step ahead. Another time, they chose to give Kakashi a taste of his own medicine. They went to great lengths to mimic the strange justifications he frequently offered for being late, such as getting lost in life, assisting an elderly woman in crossing the street, or getting into an unfortunate run-in with a black cat. To their delight, Kakashi appeared amused rather than irritated, even praising their inventiveness. Through these little exchanges, Team 7's dynamic changed from awkward and disjointed to something like companionship. Even the normally stoic Uchiha warmed up to him, and they started to build what seemed to be the beginning of a friendship. To Sakura's relief, after countless entreaties, and a few death threats, from his team, Naruto had finally given up his notorious orange jumpsuit. His new outfit was much more practical, consisting of a fitted black shirt with an orange swirl on the back, dark gray cargo pants with enough pockets to make even a shopkeeper jealous, and sturdy black boots that actually offered some ankle support, a seemingly revolutionary idea. To finish the look, he kept his headband tilted slightly to the side because, as he confidently told Sasuke, looking cool is half the battle. A voice crackled over the headset, "I'm at point A." "You're too slow, Naruto," was the response. "Alright, Team 7, let's, careful, the target's on the move." Another speaker said, "I see it." Naruto's voice was full of enthusiasm as he yelled, "Tyrant, tackle," just as a dark blur sped toward the brown cat that had been carelessly grooming itself. Sakura's angry scream almost ruptured Naruto's eardrum, causing him to tear out his earpiece. "Naruto, you idiot. What if he kills the target?" The brown cat, obviously startled by the noise, sprung to his feet with lightning-fast reflexes and just avoided Tyrant's charge. Sasuke, who was always focused, chose to disregard the confusion and pounced, catching the flying cat in mid-leap. Sakura yelled, "Awesome, Sasuke," once more, causing Sasuke and the cat to flinch. Tyrant even appeared slightly irritated. Kakashi pondered, I've never seen her so tame before," as he darted up behind Sasuke. "Have you checked if this is actually our target?" he asked. As she started to thrash, Sasuke turned and held the wriggling cat closer. "Yes," he said, revealing the cat, whose red ribbon and forehead stripes revealed her to be none other than the notorious Tora. "So you're the legendary escape artist, huh?" Naruto knelt down to examine the cat closely. Then, jagged claws cut across his face, and he cried out, "Gah! Traitor," as he fell backward and rolled on the ground, gripping the new scratches. Even Sasuke's normally austere face broke into a pleased chuckle as Sakura doubled over in laughter and Kakashi sighed, massaging his temples. Kakashi turned on his heel and stated, "All right, Team 7, let's go back to the mission hall." After 10 minutes, they returned to the Hokage's office. "Toria!" exclaimed the wife of the fire daimyo, catching the struggling cat and holding her in an almost cruel grasp. The cat gave a wretched yowl that made Naruto shudder. "That hug could put a python to shame," Saki whispered to Naruto, which explains why she always flees. Naruto deadpanned, "Serves her right for scratching me," as he observed the cat struggle in the iron grip. Kakashi casually looked over the available tasks after finishing the job in record time, saying, "Since that went smoothly, how about another D rank? Maybe some fence painting or—" "No!" Naruto interrupted, banging his palms against the desk. "I want a real mission. I'm tired of these pointless tasks." Iruka gave him a menacing gaze as Sakura reprimanded, "Naruto. That's not how you talk to the Hokage." "It's fine, as it happens, I do have a slightly more challenging mission for you," Hiruzen said with a simple laugh. He gestured to the door, and a grizzled old man stumbled in, holding a half-empty bottle of sake in his fingers. "This is Tazuna, a bridge builder from the land of waves," Hiruzen said. "Your mission is to escort him home, as he fears there may be bandits on the road. This is the team that's supposed to protect me. That little one doesn't look like he could swat a mosquito." Tazuna pointed at Naruto while squinting at them and taking a long gulp from his bottle. With his fists tightened, Naruto yelled, "Ichiwai! Who are you calling little?" but froze when he saw that everyone in the room was gazing at him. "Kakashi is one of our elite jonin, Sasuke and Sakura were top students in their class, and even Naruto has." Hiruzen laughed once more. "Some unique abilities," the old man said, glancing at Tyrant. With the exception of Naruto, who was now pouting, the gathering exploded in laughter. Naruto complained, "Humph. Just you wait, old man, I'll show you how strong I am." "Fine, fine, just don't get me killed," Tazuna groaned. "Team 7, please assemble at the village gate first thing tomorrow morning." "Excellent," Kakashi remarked, clapping his fists. "Don't worry, buddy, we'll prove them wrong," Naruto muttered to Tyrant as they walked out of the mission hall. Tyrant only growled a little and then playful pushed Naruto forward, slamming him into a lamppost.